Streaming live via the internet. Welcome to ISP Radio, your weekly source for ISP-related news, events, and interviews with industry experts. If you deliver internet via fiber optic, wireless, coax, or any other way, you're in the right place. Chat live with us weekly via ispradio.com every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Central Time. And now a brief word from our sponsors. Link Technologies, providing ISP consulting, support, and hardware for wireless ISPs. TowerCoverage.com, providing online RF coverage maps. Mimosa Networks, providing high-density, high-bandwidth radio products. Advanced LLC, providing retail and wholesale advanced communication services by matching providers with your bandwidth needs. And by Sitel, providing reliability in surge suppression. And now your host for ISP Radio, Steve Grabiel and Dennis Burgett.
Welcome to another edition of ISP Radio. Beautiful day here in New Mexico. Going to be a little bit of rainy maybe, but we need it, so we're not complaining too much. And the network on my end has been running like a charm, knock on wood. It's just real pleasing when I can focus in on business building stuff instead of putting out fires. How's it going out there, Dennis?
Oh, it's going pretty good. We have quite a few things going on. We got lots of customers, lots of business, which is always good. And I always love those networks, too, where you can sit there and you can sit back. What I do find interesting is we've had a good rash of, and this is a really good thing, a rash of customers that really what they're finally doing is they're starting to go, hey, we got this tower and we've been on it for 6 years or 5 years, however long it is. And we start going to the point of, we have old school 802.11a sectors up there. So single pole sectors still. We have the same thing in 2.4, both 5 gig and 2.4. We need to upgrade. We need to get basically the tower up to that spec. And then what we also find is we get these customers that have one particular one where they like to put repeaters, what we call micro pops, off of the 5 gig sector. So what they do is they shoot a single 5 gig link in, and it's not a dedicated link, it's just off a sector. But then what they do is they take that 5 gig link and then they put up a little Omni inside the subdivision, and now they can hit all the people in the subdivision. And that's really a good thing. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just when we look at it, all of a sudden we get a number of people off those sectors. So we've had a number of clients that have called in and said, hey, let's go ahead and make some changes. Let's go ahead and modify our network. We need to take this tower and we need to look at it, the big picture. And we need to come up with some way that we can re-engineer the tower for, one, of course, more reliability, 2, more serviceability, which is always important whenever your tower climbers get up there. And 3, we need an upgrade. We need to have a either simpler system, or over the years we've kept adding it. We've had we've not necessarily made mistakes, but we need a way to migrate things to a better platform. So, like the one customer I'm thinking of, they have a lot of these little micro pops. Probably I'd say 16 of them off of this one tower. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be migrating those micro pops. None of them need, in many cases, they don't need a dedicated backhaul. There's only 10, 15 clients off the micropop. But what they do need is they need more bandwidth, and they need more spectrum availabilities. In this particular case, we're going to end up putting up 3 sectors, I believe, just in 5 gig, and we're going to put them in 802.11ac. I believe just 40 megahertz. But the ideal is that now we're going to have a ring of sectors that those sectors are only for one thing, and that is for those micro repeaters. So now all of a sudden we get a lot better availability versus 50 clients off of a sector, plus 4 of those clients being 10 to 15 sub clients off of micropop. So now we're going to move those micropops up to their own sectors, and now your main clients stay off your main sectors. So I see a lot of that, when the weather starts getting nice, we see people starting to work on those business development and even network development skills. So instead of you being in reactive mode, in other words, reacting to various items on your network, network downs, etc., you're actually putting in a little forethought. You're going into proactive mode. You're putting some thought into a network process that should be done. But you have to have the time to do that, and I'd like we're seeing that in the ISP market is that we're seeing businesses mature into the, hey, we need to put a little thought and time into the network so that we can ensure we have best practices. Another customer of mine, I know they've been upgrading. They've put Microtech AC access points, about 2.4 and 5 gig new AC access points up, because they got still a lot of the old canopy stuff going on. What is it? Advantage APs at 14 meg. And surprisingly, they're still serving customers with them. But whenever we look at the spectral efficiency, how many bits we get per hertz, etc., they're very inefficient by today's standards as far as both bandwidth and speed. So what we are seeing is also a number of in-place upgrades where, hey, yeah, you have to go to the customer, you have to replace their CPE, but look what you're doing. You're bumping them from an access point that could only do 14 meg to an access point that can do 150, 200 meg. So all of a sudden you get a considerable amount of speed improvement. Overall, the customer is going to be happy. You're going to be able to offer them bigger packages, maybe for the same money, maybe for more money. But this is the general ideal of, as you build a WISP, most people are going to say, or at least in the development cycle that we've been seeing, 2 to 3 years is about the top lifespan for most tower equipment, assuming that it stays up there. Now we're starting to see the advent of more carrier grade, carrier class gear. In my case, we do the LTE gear from Telerad, and these pieces of gear, being software driven systems, are a lot easier to upgrade. So we're hopefully going to see lifespans in the 8 to 10 year range. But the goal here is, as WISPs mature, you're going to start seeing that you're going to see these in-place upgrades. You're going to start seeing these upgrades every 2 to 3 years, and we're going to start seeing hopefully some more proactive thought into the network design and into the build-outs as you do these towers. And then looking back at these older towers that you've put up and you've added and you've added and you've added stuff to, and now you go, how can we simplify the networking? How can we simplify the engineering on it? And how can we simplify the manageability and repairability of that tower? The one tower I'm thinking of here, I mean, they probably have, I think they have 2 12-port mid-spans in there, and they're half full. They have 2 switches and a router in there, and we're going to end up adding 1 switch and 1 higher power router. So we're going to get rid of, 4 or 5 U of equipment. So we're going to actually lower the overall power requirements of the site, allowing the battery system to run the site longer. We're going to simplify the installation so that with that PoE switch that we're going to be running, the installers are going to have an easier way of managing and using that. We're going to have remote rebootability, so we're going to have access to turn on and off ports as needed. And we're going to simplify the networking. We're going to bring together a lot of smaller subnets into larger subnets so that we have simpler methods of handling the overall network traffic as well as network access and authentication. So now is a good time in the industry, I mean, especially at the beginning of the year. Everybody's starting to get their budgets in. Everybody's wanting to put that money into the network and wanting to upgrade, and now is really a great time. We got, again, the new WISP-friendly LTE gear that is a viable option for upgrading. We have the new AirMax 7 stuff, which is upgrading. We have the Microtech AC stuff out there. We have Bitlomat. We have a number of other vendors that I probably have not mentioned, and I apologize if I haven't, that are selling new and big bad equipment for point-to-multipoint and point-to-point gear. So, now is getting to be about the time when people are going to start doing that upgrade. And I really advise you that you're not really doing your business justice if you're sitting there running and playing catch-up and you're being reactive to the network. You're being reactive to the business. You really need to be proactive, and it's very hard to do because your time's valuable. But the goal here is to be proactive, because being proactive will allow you to have less reactive time. Okay?
Right.
And that gives you the ability, being proactive gives you the ability to say, hey, how can we do those 100 or 200 or 300 installs a month? How can we keep expanding the network, etc.? So keep it up. Keep fighting the good fight. As far as other industry news, obviously our FCC report and order for the Title II stuff has came out. It has not went not necessarily official, but it's usually 60 or 90 days, and I have not got a confirmation on that, but usually 60 to 90 days from when it comes out and is posted on the site to when it becomes active. So that is coming out, but we're going to have some people on the show that's going to help us with that. So looks like, let's see here, Wednesday, March 25th, so that would be, I believe, what is that, next week. We have Thomas from ET Industries. He's going to be on our show. Again, normal time, 11 a.m. We had to start a little early today, but no problems. And then we actually have a good show April 1st. The week after that, we will have Mr. Brett Glass on from Lariat.net, a longtime industry advocate, and I'm sure we're going to be talking about the Title II implications in issues that we'll have there. Following that, on April 15th, we currently have scheduled Simon from Power Code. So if you have any of those Power Code questions, you can definitely catch him live on the air on April 15th. So with that said, Steve, that's about all the industry news. We're going to still get we're still getting lots of people analyzing the 400 plus page report. You can go online, you can find it, you can download it in a PDF, you can read it as you wish to. It is a huge document, and because of that, everybody's taking their good time on trying to understand what is required of WISPs and what is not. So as we continue on, I'm sure we will get lots more information, but for now, we're just kind of in a holding pattern while people analyze this. And I believe we have some stuff coming out on the 30th from WISPA. If you're a WISPA member, I believe there's going to be a webinar or something like that going over the requirements, etc. I have heard scuttlebutt, though, is that currently the requirements are pretty much very similar to the net neutrality rules that was originally imposed by the FCC and was struck down. But as we know, with Title II implications or Title II issues here, there could be a lot more things that could come about. And that's actually a big fear, is that even though the rules originally in the net neutrality was there, is pretty straightforward. Once we become Title II, as we are now all of a sudden, there's a lot more power that the FCC has, but we're going to have to sit back and wait, because they haven't chose to use said power or to change things, etc. So they have the ability, they just haven't said they're going to. And that's also still going to be a fear. But let's see how it all works out. Like I said, we're going to get some industry experts in, and we will have some great conversations about that. With that said, back to you, Steve.
Well, I agree with you on the proactive thing, being proactive. I'm not guilty, but I've been doing the same things, and it's interesting that you mentioned that seems to be what's happening industry-wide. I recently upgraded a service to a place that had some old gear there, and people were suffering, if you will, because of the plans I offer. So I upgraded it using a OmniTick to be the routing, and then plugged in a couple of sectors out of that, and that made a tremendous difference. I added another piece of spectrum up there, and I also upgraded the backhaul to it, which dramatically improved their service. So it's interesting that you say that there's other people doing the same thing I just did, and it's a benefit to you as a business, because what I did is the day before I did the work, I sent out an email to everyone that was off there saying, hey, you're going to be down for a little bit, but it's because we're upgrading stuff to make things better. And when we were complete with that, some people that were delinquent paid up, saying, well, since you guys are investing in us, I guess I should pay. Well, that was a positive. Yeah, you should pay. But number two, I've gained about 2 or 3 more clients in that community that were holding off because everyone was complaining about how the service was. But now things have seemed to have gotten better. And it's all upgrading, getting away from the LMR and the 802.11a stuff and B stuff, and just going to more modern equipment. It makes a big difference, and it's not too terribly expensive to do. I think total cost in the upgrade was about $500-600 of materials, and of course my time's free, but it really made a tremendous improvement in that area. So, like Dennis said, be proactive, and because of my proactivity, I'm able to say at the beginning of the show, the network's running like it should, knock on wood. Well, with that, I want to introduce our guest today. This lady, Liz Creekmore with IntelaPath, has been on the show before when we were with our old format, and Liz's specialty is in helping you gain license links and demystifying the process about getting such. And it's not brain surgery. After the show last time, I got in communications with her, and I bought a couple of license links. They weren't cheap, but she helped shepherd me through the process, and currently the links that I purchased are functional and running right now. So with that, I'd like to introduce Liz. Liz, are you there?
Yeah, hi Steve. Hi Dennis. Thanks for having me on the show.
You bet. So since the last show, like I said, you helped me through getting my own couple of license links, and it made a tremendous impact on my business. I was able to save $4,000 or $5,000 on the local incumbent's fiber optic connection that was inadequate to a more robust system, and I want to thank you for that. So, Liz, tell our guests about IntelaPath and yourself again.
Well, sure. So IntelaPath is my company. We've been around since about 2005. We spent a couple of years in R&D to develop a program that will efficiently interface with the FCC database to efficiently find spectrum for our clients. We also maintain a couple of databases of our own. So our program interfaces with the FCC database, but we keep a database of paths that are actively being coordinated. So we collect coordination letters for paths that have not yet been filed with the FCC. And this particular aspect is fairly important because you can coordinate a path, but you have 6 months to file it with the FCC. So there are, in some particular areas of the country, people are issuing a coordination for a path and then reissuing it every 6 months. So there is some frequency squatting going on. But that said, we collect all the coordinations and update our database weekly. So we have a pretty accurate depiction of what channels are available for people to license.
Now, let's say for someone that doesn't know anything about license links and the process about going through and obtaining one, why would a ISP go after a license link? What's the benefits and what's the process?
Sure, those are great questions. So we're seeing an increase in demand for licensed links just in the last couple of years, and it's in part by, it has to do with a couple of factors. One, the unlicensed spectrum is getting more congested. So if you want to invest in your infrastructure and protect your network, it makes sense to pursue a licensed radio. And then two, the licensed radios just in the last couple of years have gone down in cost considerably. So you can purchase a reliable high-capacity link now for less than $10,000, which 5 years ago was just unheard of. So that has made it more attractive for people. So just in the last 2 years, our business has boomed. We're having more and more people request licensing for the first time, which is it's great for us. But another aspect to think about is license frequencies are a limited resource. So it is gradually becoming more and more congested out there. So in terms of finding frequencies for people like yourself and like we did for your path in New Mexico, we're starting to have to come up with creative solutions to find capacity for people.
Mm-hmm. So like in my area, the crest that I broadcast this stuff from, it's commonly called RF hell. Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of frequencies being used up there that are licensed from people that have been up there for years and years. And Liz, after that first show, stepped me through the process of developing a licensed link, which was really beneficial. Like I said, to my business, it saved $4,000 a month. And that link pretty much paid for itself, or will have paid for itself in a year.
Right. Your path is a good example for us to talk about because you're not in a highly populated area, so you would think that there would be spectrum available. However, you're located on a tower that's, on top of a mountain where it's very, most of the licensed radios are consolidated to that one particular peak. So although you're not in a very congested area, spectrum is limited because you're limited to space, the towers and peaks that you have to select from. So what we had to do for your particular case is there were no channels readily available. We ended up compromising a little bit on transmit power to open up channels that would meet the interference objective. So there are a couple of things that we do when our clients are in congested areas to meet the interference objective. One, that is to compromise on transmit power, although we don't like to. That is one option, and another is to find a high performance dish with a more narrow beam width that can mitigate some of the interference. So there are a couple of tricks that we can do.
One thing I learned from you through this process is that there's really two components to this. Does your path cross someone else's path? And two, what channels are out there? Can you go a little bit into depth about those two aspects? Because to me, the last time we talked and through this process, it's possible to get a license link almost anywhere. It just depends on the path you want to take.
Right. It's sometimes hard for people to understand. They'll say, well, we're putting our radio on top of a tower and there's nothing else on it. I don't understand why it's hard to find a channel for this path. Finding a channel doesn't necessarily mean securing spectrum on a tower that no one else is on. We're looking at, and this also depends on how far your frequency propagates. So with your particular path, we were dealing with 6 gigahertz, which propagates very far. So we have to look at the azimuth or direction of your particular path. We have to look at how far this band propagates, and we have to take into consideration all of the potential victims alongside that particular path. So there are a lot of things that we do look at.
Right. So I'm an ISP, and this sounds interesting to me, how I could save some money and invest in my business. What's the process from soup to nuts, from the beginning to talking to you to end product?
Sure. So the first process is it helps when I look at a path. It helps if the customer has an understanding of how much capacity that they would like to achieve. So I'll ask them, what is your capacity minimum? And I'll also ask them about their dish size maximum. That helps me. It gives me some flexibility if we run into a certain problem. Some people can't, they'll have a landlord that won't allow them to put more than a 6-foot dish on their building. So I look at certain limitations that they might have and what they want to achieve with their path. And then we'll start looking at what spectrum is available. We get a good number of people that have already talked to radio manufacturers, which is great because that helps my process. I don't have to examine, what band that they would prefer. I don't have to convey that information to them. They'll come to us and say, we had a radio manufacturer run this path. They recommended 11 gigahertz with 2-foot dishes. Is anything available? And I would say 80% of the time we're able to find channels that will complement exactly what the customer is asking. But the other 20% we have to give some kind of feedback. They might want a larger channel size and there might only be the smaller channels available. So if in order to reach their capacity requirement, they might have to change the radio model, or they might have to consider using 2 channels instead of 1 channel. So we provide some feedback, but I would say 80% of the time people come to us, they've already spoken to a radio manufacturer, which is great. they have a reseller that's helping them. A lot of times they'll come to us through the reseller, which is even better. And they'll already have in mind, we'd like to do this path 18 gigahertz 1-foot dish. What do you have available? That helps us speed up the process. In terms of frequency selection, it takes us about a day or two to examine the path and find a channel available. If we have to give feedback, that I would say add a day on to that process. As soon as we have examined the path and selected a channel for our client, we deliver a data sheet for their review. And that particular data sheet has all aspects of the path. The coordinates, antenna height, capacity, the precise channel. We ask the customer to let us know if there are any last-minute changes they want to make before we begin the coordination. Because once we begin the coordination, if we make a change afterwards, it starts the clock all over again. A standard coordination is 30 days. We can expedite that to 2 weeks. However, the FCC stipulates we give everyone 30 days to respond. So if we've collected most responses in 2 weeks, they're all positive, the FCC will allow us to go ahead and file the path. However, if we receive an objection within that 30-day window, we still have to address it. So a standard coordination takes 30 days to complete. We can expedite it to 2 weeks if they need to transmit right away. As soon as the coordination is complete, we file the path with the FCC, and that's when they can begin transmission. There are a couple of channels that don't allow for immediate transmission, and there are only a couple. So if we engineer a path that involves one of those channels, we let the client know right away. So I'd say 99% of the time, we aim to select channels that will allow the customer to transmit as soon as the coordination process is complete.
Right.
Lastly, there's one aspect that we're educating people on is the construction requirement. So as soon as your license is granted, the FCC requires you to construct your path in 18 months. And that means they want you to notify them as soon as you have constructed your path. We include that service to our clients free of charge. We just ask them, shoot us an email as soon as your path is constructed, and we'll let the FCC know. If you don't notify the FCC when your path is constructed, they will decommission it from the FCC database. So it's a pretty important last step of the process. But all in all, that's typically the process. We collect the client's path information, we select a channel, we give it to them for review, we begin the coordination process, and then we file the path, and they can transmit immediately.
Right. So would you say a majority of your clients have gone through vendors or distributors who call you up saying this is what they want, or do people actually contact you, and what's the preferred method?
I'd say the majority and the preferred method is that they're working with some reseller or some distributor, because in terms of hardware selection, there is a cost factor, and there are other factors involved that the distributors and especially the resellers, there's a value add to working with them. So I would say the majority of our clients contact us. They're already working with a reseller, and most of the time the resellers call us direct.
Gotcha. Dennis, you got any questions?
No, I've worked with we've worked with Liz quite a bit in the past, so it all is good. The big thing to keep in mind here for most of you is that as you start expanding, and this is again as you start maturing in your businesses, you're going to see a definite change in the way you do business. You're going to start looking at licensed links, and you're going to start looking at them as, I need them, I want them, I have to have them. And the reason for that is as your business grows, you're going to eventually find that 5 gigahertz spectrum especially is going to be really used for access. And you really want to optimize into keep as much as this 5 gigahertz spectrum for your access, for your clients to get to you, versus using the 5 gigahertz spectrum for the backhauls. Now, when you first start out, of course, you're going to use 5 gigahertz spectrum, and we see this from other manufacturers. We have Mimosa, we have Ubiquiti, etc. We see these unlicensed operations running very high bandwidth, but when we also look at them, we also see the high bandwidth taking up a large chunk of spectrum. You know, the example I'm going to use is that with 802.11ac running 80 megahertz channels, you know, that is a huge bandwidth or spectrum, a piece of spectrum, I should rather say, that is being used up. And whenever you really look at that, if you're at 100, if you're using an 80 megahertz channel, so that is potentially a minimum 2 sectors at 40 megahertz. And if you assume, 50 to 60 clients per sector, you know, now you're at 120 possible paying customers that you could be using, or that you could use, or that you could have using the same spectrum. So the question really comes down to, at this point, where do you need to be? Where do you want to be in your business model? Eventually, you're going to say, I would rather have that frequency spectrum, the 5 gigahertz in this case, to be used for my customer access mediums. Very important. And then you're going to eventually start putting up license links, because that's a whole nother ballgame. What happens whenever you do have a 5 gigahertz backhaul and you start getting interference on it? Well, now you have the issue that you have interference on it. You have no recourse. You must have the information. You must accept the interference, just as you may not cause interference. So you really don't have any recourse other than working with whoever is causing the interference, and maybe they're nice and will change channel, but that could cause interference in another link or another path. So in reality, as your business grows, you're going to see this more and more often, is that you're going to be looking towards licensed backhauls to carry the majority of your traffic. Not only are these, or is this gear going to give you better overall quality, because in many cases they're full duplex, giving you a faster network access. Typically, they also give you higher bandwidths. Okay, I mean, some of these things, most of these products I've seen easy 1 gig and 2 gig links, and I've seen many links that are at the 200 to 300 meg mark, if not more. And depending on the spectrum that's needed, you may even be able to use multi-channels, dual channels, and actually double your bandwidth up to 600 meg, etc. So it really depends on the vendor. It also depends on the distance. It also depends on, of course, what licenses are available in the area. So with that said, the ideal here of going and migrating to more licensed links for your backhauls is not new. And as your business grows, your business matures into that, quote, business, you're going to look at that proactive approach. How can I prevent noise from interfering with my backhaul that has 400 customers off of it? And that's what you're going to start looking at. You're going to go, hey, I can use licensed backhauls for that. Doesn't really matter the manufacturer and brand. We're not really talking about that here. And then you're going to need somebody very similar to Liz that is going to help you find the frequencies that are available, so that you know what equipment you can use and what equipment you cannot use. There may be an instance where the link is really good, but the problem is there's not any 11 gigahertz channels free. You may have to go up to 18 or some other band. And Liz is going to be the person that's going to help you determine, here's what we can use, here's what we think we can get away with, and actually have, instead of a, quote, educated guess, that's basically what a lot of it is, but instead of you having a guess, hey, I'm just going to use 11 gig, you have no idea what's up there. Liz, or someone like Liz, is going to be able to sit there and turn around and go, here is a much better place where we think you should be based on our information, and now let's file and let's do all the FCC work that needs to be done all with that. So lots and lots of options there.
Now, Liz, I got a question. So say there's a cowboy out there and he goes and calls up a distributor and says, send me an 11 gig link. Will they necessarily, it's up to that person, but what are the implications for a cowboy setting up something without going through the coordination and such?
Well, I mean that's a good point. We are occasionally, I'd say, we run into this situation about once or twice a year that someone will install a licensed link. It will be operating just fine for a couple of years, and then all of a sudden, they'll troubleshoot with the manufacturer because they are witnessing some interference into their link, and they'll contact us just to ensure that the information in the FCC database reflects that their channel should still be open and interference-free. So we'll restudy their path against anything that's been filed in the database to ensure that, yes, your channel should be interference-free, and what it seems like to be is there's some rogue operator out there. The problem then is that it lies on the shoulders of the WISP to identify who that operator is. So they would have to get a spectrum analyzer out there to find out where that interfering radio is, and that can be time consuming, and it could also be expensive. So we've had some people go and do that. We've also had some people say to us, if it's less expensive, find me an alternate channel, and I'll change channels to avoid this interference. So we've done a mixture of both. But I would say, once or twice a year, we'll get a phone call from someone whose link was operating for several years, and now all of a sudden they're experiencing interference, and it's a problem.
Right. Well, I personally have been through that. We built the last license link I built. It's 2 horizontal channels, and one of the radios is experiencing some interference, so I had to order up a spectrum analyzer, and I think that's the path I'm going to have to take, is just go up there and sniff around. Mm-hmm. And see who might be squatting on my channel, because I did call up Liz, and she checked and said, nope, it's free and clear. You shouldn't have this interference. So that tells us that there's some cowboy out there operating where he shouldn't. So it's incumbent upon me to order up that spec analyzer and go up there and sniff it out, find out where the energy's coming from, and contact that person and say, hey, I think you're on my channel. Can you show me your FCC stuff? And this is mine. Can you go back to where you're at? Is that how that typically would work?
Well, I mean, if they're a rogue operator, they probably won't even be in the FCC database, and so that's a huge problem. But you bring up a good point. One thing I wanted to talk about was the importance of establishing some kind of frequency protection for anyone that has licensed links. It's something that they might want to look into. Because when someone issues a coordination in their area, they'll receive copies of this coordination, and they'll be given 30 days to object as part of the FCC process. But also part of the process is, if they don't voice an objection within 30 days, the FCC will go ahead and allow the path to be licensed. So the new path could possibly interfere, cause a conflict with their already licensed path, and that's a problem. If you're in a very congested area, you might receive a couple coordinations a day to review. So one thing that the frequency coordinators, myself included, has established is a frequency protection plan, where instead of leaving it on the shoulders of the ISP to review all of these documents, and you might not have the tools to do so, we would review it for you and object if there is a conflict. So it's something that, if you have multiple paths, or if you're in a congested area with one single path, it's something that people should really start to think about to protect their investment, to protect their channel.
Right. So basically you're saying read those PCNs, and if there's something coming up in your area, it's okay to reach out to your coordinator, because they're going to try to help you out to object or say, no, it's okay. And I think you helped me with that on some license stuff going up in RF hell.
Right.
Yeah, it's been a interesting journey, if you will, doing the FCC licensed equipment, but it's kind of a bummer that, I get the radio link zeroed in for optimal signal strength, and I'm not getting the full QAM that I should.
Right. I mean, especially it's it's still a costly investment to purchase a licensed radio and to purchase the license itself.
So you mentioned that licensed links under $2,000. Is that like a typical 2-foot dish with a couple of radios from a specific manufacturer? I mean, that seems like a minimum, but of course, for longer distances, you need bigger dishes, of course.
Yeah, I meant under $10,000.
Yeah.
So, we're seeing.
No, you said under $10,000.
Yeah, there are a couple manufacturers that will make them under the $10,000 mark, and that has driven a lot of people, towards licensed radios. I would say it lowered the barrier of entry to a lot of people. It just made it more feasible. Another thing to mention is that you could start off with you could secure spectrum for a low cost radio, so a sub $10,000 radio. You can secure the spectrum, and then in a couple of years, if you want to change out the radio, you at least have the channels allocated for your use, and we would just modify the FCC license to reflect the radio that provides all the bells and whistles and higher capacity, that sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as the path is secured by you, you have the ability to upgrade if the technology's out there. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Correct. So if we secure the channel, and obviously we would have to re-coordinate the path, and there's a capacity difference, but typically if there's not a significant difference in transmit power between the two radios, most of the time we can reuse that same channel. So you can secure a channel using a low-cost radio and think, in 5 years from now, I'll be able to afford the radio that has all the bells and whistles and that sort of thing. And we're seeing a lot of people do that. In the last couple of years, we've been doing a lot of upgrades for people. They're pulling down old equipment, and they're putting in these radios that can achieve a much higher capacity across the same channel width.
So is IntelaPath a one-man shop, or I met one of your folks at Wispalooza last year, and it sounds like you're growing.
Yeah, we're certainly growing. This year we had to hire an individual just to manage our database, which, if you think of all the coordinations out there, and all the new application filings with the FCC, it's become a full-time job. And we hired a new salesperson. He was at the WISP America show, and that was pretty exciting for us just to have a couple of people there. So we're growing, and I think we'll continue to grow. Last year was probably our best year, and this year we've started out great. So I think that's, the demand for licensed radios is only increasing.
So along with the cost of the radio and the gear, what would you mind going into a little bit of cost for the coordination study and all the stuff you get with it? I know that when I signed up and you did your analysis for me, I started getting flooded with these PCN requests, and that's good. But, what along with the cost of the equipment and installation is involved in buying a license link?
Yeah, so there's a cost to the frequency coordination itself. We typically offer our services through our resellers, so they tend to price that out. But I would expect you're looking a little under $2,000 just for the coordination and also for the FCC fees. So it is a little bit of an investment. However, the license itself is a 10-year license. So those channels are allocated to the licensee for a 10-year period.
So roughly $2,000 for the analysis, then you got the radios and the installation, and then you should have a higher capacity interference-free path. That's the whole crux of doing a licensed path, correct? Correct.
Yes. And like I said, we've invested a lot in establishing our reseller channel. So our services are offered through our resellers much less cost than direct. So it helps them to sell their radios, and it helps us too. We have a pretty strong partnership there.
Yeah. Any just to throw out names, who are some of your distribution, if you could?
Yeah, I mean, we've got the guys at Double Radius on the East Coast. They've been a very loyal customer of ours. We've also started working with Crossover Distribution. They've got a local guy that lives about 20 minutes from our office, and I mean, we've invested a lot in establishing that reseller channel, so we're happy to bring more people on board. We're hiring more people, so we're looking to grow in the next couple of years.
Yeah, for sure, because like you said, as time goes on, technology costs go down, and then, more and more people are utilizing this. Dennis, you got any comments?
Yeah. I mean, we use at Link Technologies here, we use Liz for those path studies as well when we sell a complete package. Now, as a system integrator, as far as Link Technologies, we do things a little differently in that we try to package everything together that you need all at once. We hate doing the, hey, you need this, then you need to contact this person, then you need to do this person, and get with the FCC. So the goal here, for us anyway, is to make it an instant turnaround. So in other words, you get one invoice. That invoice is from Link Technologies, and that invoice includes basically everything you need: the gear, the hardware, the licensing, coordination, etc. Everything you need to get things taken care of and done and out the door. Now, what's really nice about that is we also work with a number of leasing companies. So whenever we look at the licensed radios, obviously costs are going to be coming down. There's probably some new products coming out that will drastically drop license costs. However, right now you're still in the $10,000 range for most links, depending on the size of antennas, things like that. And what we're going to be doing here is you still have to have the licensing and all that kind of stuff. So what we work with in the leasing aspect is we bring that leasing aspect. So when you have, let's just toss out a number, $10,000, nice and easy round number, and you divide that over the let's say 3 years. Well, now you're at like $270. That is an easy monthly cost for you to get into a licensed radio. So that is probably a 300 plus meg full duplex radio licensed that you can put up that will probably last easily more than 3 years. Okay, it's still within the lifespan of the radio. So in other words, the radio typically would have a warranty that would include those 3 years. So other than a direct lightning strike, which you would have insurance for anyway, guess what? You're basically going to have it. Okay. Now the difference is that we can take the cost of the radio, we can take the cost of the equipment that you need to install the radio, the cables, the dishes, all that kind of good stuff, and the licensing and frequency coordination cost, and we can roll all that up into that one invoice and give it to a leasing company that then takes all that information and rolls it into that $270 price tag. Okay, so now all of a sudden, instead of you sitting there worried that, hey, I have to find $10,000 or $12,000 or whatever it is to come up with for a licensed link, all of a sudden we can bring that license link down to a low monthly payment that is relatively inexpensive and easy to bear as your WISP grows. It's just like buying bandwidth. The only difference is instead of you buying fiber to this new tower, you're buying a licensed link. And that may be perfectly fine for you. It may be plenty of bandwidth for you, and it would definitely, obviously $270 is probably a lot cheaper per month than getting a piece of fiber at the tower. So it is what it is, but the point being is that, again, we do work with Liz, and we can roll all that up into that one nice invoice so that all of a sudden you have a nice, easy way of handling it. Obviously, there are other vendors. I don't want to say that there's not. There are definitely other vendors, but I always want to put that out there is that we try to make it easy for you. We don't want to make it complicated and hard.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up. Being able to cash flow in a high piece of equipment like that's very important for me. I was replacing $4,000 of payments to the local incumbent carrier here for a fiber optic thing for licensed gear. So it made sense. After 3-4 years, that stuff will be paid off. I'll be out of my lease, and that I can realize that $4,000 hopefully in my pocket. But being in the ISP industry, you're constantly upgrading, and so you just churn that money back into the business. So it won't be a cash windfall for me at the end of 3 years. But you're absolutely right, Dennis. It's easy to justify doing this through a lease. That's very critical to understand.
Yeah, well, and you have to be real careful with the leasing companies, too, because some leasing companies, when they look at the invoice, they see a service, and a lot of them will not allow you to add a service into a lease, because the whole point of their lease is they're giving you basically credit. They're going to buy it, and they're giving you terms to pay the, think of it as a loan back, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But they typically want to say, hey, we have a right to the hardware should you default. Okay, but now all of a sudden you have a service on there. Well, how can they repossess a service? So right. You have to be careful. Certain leasing companies will let you do that. Some won't. We have a good working relationship with the leasing companies that we work with. And it does work quite well. It's very simple to use, very quick and efficient. And then, like I said, we can take all those costs and roll them all up in there, and everybody's all happy.
So basically turnkey, and I imagine that's the other people you deal with as well, right, Liz?
Yes, I think there's a great value in making it a turnkey solution where it's simple and easy for people to understand, because there are so many components to a licensed radio itself. There's so much technology that ISPs have to absorb already. So if we can make selling a licensed radio a simple, easy, painless process, I think that just encourages more people to buy the radio. So I think the resellers do a good job of doing that, of bundling it in and selling the radio alongside the licensing and handling that aspect for the customer.
Well, that was true for me when we first talked earlier last year. It made a world of difference for me, and it was easy. And even doing the installation wasn't too terribly difficult. It's not outside the scope of the stuff I already do. Well, unless, Liz, you have anything further you want to tell us about IntelaPath, tell us how the people can get in contact with you, or if they want to go through their distribution chain, how they could get in contact with you to start looking at going into a licensed link with all the benefits involved.
Sure, absolutely. Well, our website is www.IntelaPath, that's INTELPATH.com. There's a lot of helpful information on there. We also have a general sales email address. It's sales@IntelaPath.com. We're happy to give a lot of free information away. We're happy to educate people on the licensing process. Anything to encourage the growth of the licensed radio sale.
Right. And Dennis, you got anything else?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything that we would need to cover at this point in time.
So guys, if you're out there and your 5 gig is totally congested, and like Dennis said, you want to conserve some of that and take it off your backhaul, licensed links are the way of the future, and the prices have come down, and the path analysis are very fair and actually pretty reasonable, and with leasing included, it's easy to dovetail these things into your existing operation and thus save yourself some money and improve your performance to those customers. So with that, I think we will wrap up the show. I want to thank Dennis for producing the show from St. Louis, and I want to thank Liz for being on the show and demystifying the licensed FCC links that can be purchased, and it's not that difficult, and it's actually pretty easy, and I think from my past experiences, you'll experience the same too from the folks that can help you out in this aspect. So with that, if you'd wrap up the show, we'll talk to you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to ISP Radio. We hope you've gained new insights and additional wisdom in our industry as well as your business. Please remember to visit our show sponsors via the links on ispradio.com. If you're interested in becoming a show sponsor, contact us at sales@ispradio.com. Now go out there and push those packets as fast as you can. Good luck and Godspeed.